What's going on, guys? A little bit of bad news to start the video. The morning of the tournament, I put my GoPro on the back of the truck in its case with all the batteries, and we took off with it back there. So my GoPro is on the side of the road somewhere. I have no idea where it is, and I don't have any footage of the whole weekend. Or I do of practice, but practice was nothing special. So to make up for that, I'm going to drop a serious juice bomb of how I finished third this weekend and really how I should have won the tournament. It's probably more than I want to give up, but it's got to be done. It's not a new technique, but it's kind of a new way of fishing it, sort of. So stick around. I'll get into it. You guys are going to want to hear this. We'll go ahead and get started at practice. My dad and I got out on Friday because he was fishing as a boater, and we went straight to Potomac Creek. We wanted to try to figure that deal out, and my second cast in the community hole right at the front of the Potomac Creek, I put this fish in the boat. I'll run the clip real quick. In there. Yeah. That's a big one too. It's not a big one, but it's a good one. Huh? Yeah, God, that's probably like a, what, like a, that might be like a 3.5. Thanks, buddy.
We're out of here.
So I put a 3.5 pounder on the boat, and I'm like, wow, like, I might have just whacked them. Literally second cast of the day. And that ends up being our last bite of the whole entire day. So we got on absolutely nothing. The grass was grown in fairly well down there in Potomac Creek. It was a little bit dirty, which is why when I first caught that fish, I had been messing around with this new golden shiner jackhammer with that spunk shad on the back. I was like, dang, in this dirty water, it looks really good. Like, I caught that fish, I was like, I might be onto something here. And I threw it around a lot more. Never got another bite. My dad didn't get any bites. It was just totally dead, Potomac Creek. So I know in his head, he was like, all right, I'm just going to go back upriver tomorrow and fish stuff that I've fished in the past. And I know in my head, I was kind of thinking, wow, the bite's really tough. I'm probably just going to stick a Senko in my hand and try to go to work with that. Try to get bites, honestly. Senko is a great way to get bites on the river, especially if you get a good feel for popping it through the grass. You really want to be trying to get it to fall in those holes and stuff like that. And we'll get into why that didn't really work for me during the tournament. So I get my boater. I give him a call and talk to him. He basically says, we're not doing anything too crazy. We're going to stick in Belmont Bay, that area, and maybe run a little bit of wood, but that actually didn't end up happening in the tournament. So we start right outside of Belmont Bay. I wouldn't typically tell you guys where my boater was fishing, but I feel like on the river it's a little bit different because it's not like there wasn't 50 other boats there. But we pull up, and I can see just from tossing the Senko around and looking down at his graph that there wasn't a lot of grass yet. It was pretty patchy, like there was patches kind of around, but it wasn't straight grown all across the bottom. And the water was also a little dingy. So I was throwing that Senko around, and usually you want to be, or personally, when I'm throwing that Senko around, I want to try to pop it out of the grass, let it fall into holes and stuff like that. But I wasn't even hitting any grass, really. Like every now and then I pull through a little patch, but for the most part, it was just, I felt nothing. I just felt like I was popping it up off the bottom. I look around to other people fishing, and I see everyone else just dragging, throwing some kind of little finesse worm around, something like that. And I was like, all right, I got to do something different. Like, I'm not going to differentiate myself in any way if I keep doing this. It doesn't feel right. I know with the Senko, I need more grass than that. Otherwise, you know, I'm sure I'd still catch fish. I did catch fish on a Senko because I did continue to throw it some, but they were all shorts. I knew that I needed to do something different. So here comes the part you guys are all looking for. Still don't know if I even want to give it up. It's right here. It's no secret, but it is sort of a secret, and I'll explain why. But so in one of my previous videos about the Kerr Lake recap, I talked about how I felt like I could have hopped the chatterbait around and had some success doing that. It's one of the biggest adjustments I would have made because the water was dirty. Just getting that vibration kind of along the bottom, slow. I feel like it'd be good for finicky fish in a dirty water situation. And when I looked down at the water at the Potomac with not that much grass, a little bit of tint to it, I was like, you know what? I mean, the chatterbait works out here in the river, but most of the time you're ripping it through grass. I was thinking, why not just slowly crawl that thing along the bottom? So I pulled out the green pumpkin jackhammer with a Zako on the back. Sometimes I throw a Z-crawl when I'm doing this kind of technique. Works really well in Lake Anna if the water's really dingy. But the water here wasn't that dingy, so I figured that straight tail Zako was a better move. And so what made it different from what you would originally just think as a chatterbait is I was hopping it. And it's even different than just hopping it. I wasn't just letting it fall. It's more of a lift your rod tip slowly. Early in the morning, especially with low light, I was a little more aggressive with it. But you want to pick it up off the bottom, and then instead of just letting it fall, you actually want to keep some tension on the line so it comes up and it falls slower and more naturally, sort of at an angle. Does this really make a difference? I feel like it does. You definitely get hung up less, but I also just think it gives a much more natural look. Also lets the tides kind of carry the bait a little bit. Like if you're just straight dropping it, this is a 1/2 ounce, so it would just. Whereas if you're keeping that tension, you're getting a slow fall. It's probably actually drifting a little bit. Just very natural looking. And so while it was still dark out, or at least low light, I pulled it out. One of the first casts, I'm doing that. It comes down, hits the bottom, dunk, reel it in. It's a 4-pounder. And I'm like, all right, like this is definitely a deal. I haven't really seen anyone else catch anything. I just put a 4-pounder in the boat. Maybe 10 minutes later, dunk, I put another small keeper in the boat, 15.5 incher. I'm like, I am on to something here. This is a deal. I can really make something happen today with this. But then the sun starts to come up, and I notice like these jackhammers chip a little bit. You can see where it's got that kind of silver coming through, and the sun was reflecting off that and giving it a flash. And I think part of this whole deal is with that dingy water, you don't want them to actually be able to get like a look at it. It's just supposed to be kind of a dark figure. That's why that green pumpkin's really good with that black blade. And then giving off that flash just kind of was killing my confidence. I was like, I haven't gotten bit in like 20 minutes. It doesn't feel right. I've already got 2 in the boat. I'm just going to start tossing the Senko around and see if I can get a couple bites. And I do get a couple bites with the Senko, but they're shorts. And I'm like, all right, I got to figure something else out. Like I can't just settle and be like, all right, I need 3 keepers. Let's just keep throwing a worm around and hope I catch 3 keepers and have a decent day. I knew I needed to be more aggressive than that, so I decided to tie on a brand new jackhammer with the brand new paint, black paint, and even with the sun beaming down, the water was still dingy enough that I think it still was still perfect for it. And one of the first casts I throw out there, dunk, 4.5 pounder, put it in the boat. So that's my 3rd fish and I've already got a 4.5 and a 4. I'm like, I'm in pretty good business right now. And another thing I want to talk about as the day went on, so as the wind starts to pick up, this really makes a difference too, because like I said, I'm picking it up and letting it fall on kind of a tight line here. So you get that glide. I noticed I could only really fish it correctly if I was throwing with or against the wind. Honestly, more particularly into the wind was the best way to fish it. Just felt the most comfortable. I think it really glided along the bottom better. And that's another thing I want to talk about too as that sun came up. Instead of fishing it more aggressively where I was actually pulling it off the bottom, it was more of a I can't even like get the camera on the ground, but instead of pulling it up off the bottom, more just pulling it along the bottom, maybe a little bit off the bottom, but just slow, and then just letting it kind of fall, letting it kind of fall, just so subtle. Basically just dragging it, but making sure it's still kind of drifting naturally. And I noticed that, yeah, if I'm casting into the wind, it was so much easier to get that kind of look that I wanted to give the fish. And so we moved spots because it went dead for a little bit, and we stayed in the Belmont area. We didn't catch anything in our next spot. It's actually a really good spot. I like it. The grass just hadn't really grown in there yet. So we make a move over to behind the island. If you've ever been to Belmont, you've been behind the island because there's so many boats that fish back there, and there's so many fish. There really is. And the water was a little extra gingy over there, I think just because of all the boats. So my first instinct was, you know what, let's just do something a little different, like totally different. You know, I've already succeeded doing something a little bit different. Why not go way off the wall? And I started throwing this guy again, and just ripping it like almost like a spoon. If you saw me, you were probably like, what is this idiot doing? And I probably was being an idiot because I didn't get a bite, but it was worth a try. Sometimes when you're out there, you got to do random things like that. But then I went right back to the good old faithful green pumpkin one, even just in the middle of the whole crowd. I made a long cast into the wind. We're almost like right in line with behind the island at this point. I pick up, drop it, pick up, drop it, dunk. And I fight this fish all the way to the boat, comes up, shakes its head about 5 feet from the net. It's like a 4.5 pounder. Chatterbait comes flying out of his mouth. And you know how when you lose a fish right at the boat on the surface, they just kind of sit there stunned. They're just like, and then they swim off. It did that. I thought I was about to throw up because I was like, wow, that would have put me at 14.5 pounds with 4 fish. And we still had, what was probably 11:30 at the time. We had a 2:30 check-in. So I would have 3 more hours to put 1 more keeper in the boat. So that hurt. That hurt pretty bad. We stick around there for a little longer. I don't catch any more. And we make a move back to where we started. And we have about an hour and a half left. I'm like, all right, hour and a half. I need 2 fish. That's it. And I just decided I'm going to stick this chatterbait in my hand. I didn't throw anything else that last hour and a half. And with about an hour left, donk. Little over 15-incher, put them in the boat. Another half hour goes by, and donk on the chatterbait again. About a 2.5 pounder, put them in the boat, and I was like, oh my gosh, thank the Lord. I mean, it still hurt that I lost that big fish because, I mean, if you pair up that 4.5 with that 2.5, I'm winning. It wouldn't even have been close. But you also never know. Maybe I would have never gotten another bite the rest of the day, and I would have just been stuck with 14.5 pounds. It wouldn't have made a difference. So it's hard to say. I also, those fish were so finicky all day. I'm talking like, when I say I'm dropping it, they're hitting it. It's not like I was reeling and they were grabbing it, and maybe I didn't get a good hook in them. Every single fish I caught, donk, swimming off with it, and I'm hitting them. And they were all skin hooked right inside the mouth. Like, I just don't know if they were just that finicky that day or what the deal was, but they were not eating it good. I mean, just the fact that I was getting the bigger bites with this thing still tells me that it was a deal, but I don't know what was up with that. So just the fact that I got 5 in the boat out of my 6 keeper bites is, honestly, I was just thrilled about that. So then, yeah, that was the end of the day. We went in. I ended up with 14 pounds, 12 ounces, which put me in 3rd place. So that's my 3rd top 5 out of the 4 tournaments I fished this year. My other one was a 0, which kind of put the damper on it all, but it's still a good start to the season. There's one other thing I wanted to bring up. I'm not actually going to tell you guys. You might be able to tell just by looking at it. But there's one other thing I was doing with that chatterbait that makes a big difference. Just a little little tweaks to the bait. And this doesn't even just go for the chatterbait out there on the river. This goes for everything you throw in the river. They really get keyed in on something if you make this little tweak to all your baits. And I'm not gonna tell you guys that right now. I'll tell you what though, if you get me 50 likes on this video and I get to 50 subscribers by the time I make my Kerr Lake video next week, I will drop that little juice bomb at the beginning of that video. So make sure you like the video and subscribe. That also just helps me out. Maybe like a little sympathy like for losing my GoPro. But yeah, I'll tell you guys exactly that little tidbit at the beginning of the Kerr video of something that I don't know why, but the Potomac River fish just get dialed in on this if you do it. So yeah, it's all I've really got for the Potomac River. It was a great event, super fun. The river's always just a fun place to fish. And especially when you get on something a little different that makes you feel good as an angler, makes you feel smart. But I hope you guys can take something away from that little deal that I got on and try it out yourself. Not even just on the river, but even on lakes. If you get in a little dingy water, especially on lakes with rock, I think it just imitates a crawdad really well. So give that technique a try. And again, like and subscribe, and I'll drop that little tidbit of the next video. And yeah, thanks for watching. I will catch you guys next time.